So his day started like any other day. He started off his day like he would any day by reading the newspaper. But what he read in that newspaper that day would change his life, would change his perspective of the world, and would change his perspective of himself. The article of the newspaper read La marchande de la mort est morte, which means, in French, it means the merchant of death is dead. The article then further went on to say things about how the person who found ways to kill people quicker is finally dead. So the article was celebrating the fact that this person is dead. Right? And this person who was reading it, it changed his perspective because what he was reading was an obituary of his own. He was reading his own obituary. The person I'm talking about is Alfred Nobel. Some of you must have heard about him. But let's go back and think about what led to this moment. What led to this moment of people celebrating his death, right? So Alfred was born to an impoverished Swiss family. His dad was an inventor, a mechanic. His mom worked at a grocery store. He had 8 siblings, so they were very poor growing up. He had 8 siblings. Out of them, only 3 of them actually reached the age of 10. The rest of them died off, unfortunately, due to the lack of good medical services at the time and access to public healthcare. Alfred's dad, early on, his businesses weren't doing too well, so they moved to Russia, where he set up some manufacturing companies, and he also started manufacturing gunpowder. This was in the late 1800s. He made a lot of money over there because during the Crimean War that Russia was a part of, he was actually producing gunpowder, so he made a lot of money, and he made sure that all his children, the 3 children that were alive at that point, had the best education. Alfred was 5 at the time when they moved to Russia. He made sure that he got the best private tutor for physics, for maths, for chemistry, for literature. Alfred actually wanted to be a poet when he was young. He loved writing poems and loved sort of publishing his work as well. So early on, although he wanted to pursue being a poet, his dad nudged him into becoming a chemist. He sent him, at the young age of 16, he was sent to France to work in some of the best labs in the country, where some of the best chemists at that point were actually in Paris working in those labs. He went on further, that excitement of interest in chemistry grew quite a bit, and he actually went to US to pursue a 4 years degree in chemistry, where again he was exposed to some of the best in the industry, best chemists in the world. When he came back to Russia, his dad, I told you about his dad manufacturing gunpowder, right, for all these explosive and the war purposes. His dad was trying to find a way to stabilize nitroglycerin. Have you guys heard of nitroglycerin? So it's a substance that is used today as well in explosives, but it was extremely unstable. Hundreds of people lost their lives trying to stabilize and transport nitroglycerin. It's 10 times more explosive than gunpowder. So think of it, at that time where power meant conquering people and showing your energy by sort of destroying others, someone who had access to nitroglycerin, something that was 10 times more powerful than what the competition was using, was at a massive advantage. Right? So everyone in the Nobel family in particular, Alfred's father and himself, started on this quest to find out how do I stabilize nitroglycerin, how do I make it into a viable commercial product, and how do I make it safe for people to use. So that's where this quest started. And what even happened is one of their factories actually blew up while they were trying to stabilize nitroglycerin, and Alfred lost his elder brother in that incident. But that didn't stop them. His quest to really find a way to stabilize it was so much that they continued with the effort of finding a way to stabilize it. And there's an interesting story of how they actually came to stabilize it. So Alfred was playing with nitroglycerin, various experiments that they've been doing over the years. He actually dropped it. He dropped the beaker of nitroglycerin. And while he was thinking of his imminent death, which was going to happen in a few seconds, probably saying his last prayers, and a few seconds later he looked down and the beaker was actually in a crate of hay and some silica, some sand, and the glycerin had mixed with that. And by chance he found a way to stabilize nitroglycerin. When nitroglycerin mixes with sand or silica, it forms a pasty substance which then can be stabilized and can be easily transported to different locations. So just by that chance, he actually found a way to stabilize it and hence found a way to sort of commercially distribute it as well. And from there was no turning back after that. He set up 95 different manufacturing industries across 22 different countries, had 355 different patents across the board in this space. So once he did that, he became one of the world's richest man alive at that point, because everyone wanted this substance that was stable and could be used to sort of not just for wars, but for army and for construction and so on, railway construction and so on. So that made him the world's richest man at that point. But also what it did was make him this merchant of death, right? And there's an interesting story, but he wasn't dead, right? Where did this story and why did this obituary get printed? So his brother was actually in France and he died of a stroke. The newspaper thought that Alfred died and they published his obituary. And that moment kind of then led him to think about what his contribution to mankind is, what will people remember him by. He didn't say anything to anyone. So this happened in 1888, the article being published. He didn't say anything to anyone. In 1896, 8 years later, the world would know about his plans for his future plans through his will. So once he died, people started reading his will, and in his will, he mentioned that 94% of all his wealth, now he was one of the richest man in the world at that point, 94% of all his wealth was to go into a fund, and that fund was, the interest accrued on that fund was to be used to as awards for people who contributed significantly in 5 different fields. And you'll see 5 fields that he's extremely passionate about. Physics, right? Maths, chemistry, of course, right? Literature, remember he wanted to be a poet, yeah? And he actually wrote and published his own works as well. And can you guess the final one? Peace. Something he was extremely, that changed his worldview. And even when it comes to stabilizing nitroglycerin, his goal was actually to find a safe way to use it. So that's where the Nobel Fund, the Nobel Prizes as they are today is in place. And the Corpus Fund that he accumulated is close to $500 million. The interest, $1.4 million, is what people get today. And that is what most of us remember today of. When you think of Alfred Nobel, you think automatically of the Nobel Prize, right? And that is his legacy. So I ask you today one question. What will your obituary say? What is your legacy? Thank you.
Thank you.